What a weekend of NBL basketball it was. So many storylines coming out of it all. And this is going to be a big edition of Moments That Mattered, brought to you by Mitsubishi Motors after what was a spectacular round in the Hungry Jacks NBL. Joel Peterson and NBL MVP Derek Rucker with you. Ruck, I mean, wow, what a weekend of basketball, hey? The NBL is back with a bang.
It is, and it was just so unexpected, all the results in-game over the course of the weekend. We had some great emotion. We had just a fantastic weekend with a lot of shifts and changes of positions in the standings, and significant ones, some missed opportunities and some opportunities taken advantage of.
It was a Super Sunday. It was billed as, and it was unequivocally, the biggest day of the season. For so many reasons, for all the emotion and all the drama and all the tension that went in to what happened yesterday, both in Melbourne and more primarily out west at RAC Arena. And that is where we're going to start, where we finished this round in the NBL. And what a game it was, what a day it was, all the theatre and drama of Bryce returning to Perth. And I mean, the game delivered on all of that hype and then some.
Well, for 3 quarters, I mean, the Perth Wildcats truly dominated the game. They were playing exactly how John really would have wanted them to, and I thought they did a fantastic job in not negating Bryce Cotton's impact on the game, but just reducing his influence and making it really tough for him to find quality looks at the basket. And as a result of that, they built a fantastic lead. The only problem is they were allowing Isaac Humphries to get easy opportunities at the rim, and it kind of cost them down the stretch.
So 95-94 is the final score. They were down by 20, so Perth get the first bucket of the final quarter and Adelaide are down by 20. Under 6 minutes to go, they are down by 17. This was a furious final quarter.
It was crazy, and when you look at how Adelaide did it, they did it on the back of being able to accumulate stops. Mike Wells made some changes. He went with the smaller lineup, moved Cheatham to the 5 spot, brought in Isaac White, brought in Kenyon at times, brought in DJ Vasiljevic, and changed their defensive pickup points and extended the pressure a little bit. Now, it didn't cause turnovers, but what it did was just made Perth a little bit stagnant on the offensive end. Keep in mind, Perth had 90 points at about the 4.5-minute mark, and they only scored 4 for the balance of the fourth quarter.
And if you only saw the final 30 seconds or so on this game, even you got pretty good value for money, because what a wild sequence it was. Let's revisit that final 30 seconds or so, because there are so many big plays that we went with down the stretch.
Well, Mike Wells made a great adjustment in that timeout and came back with his big lineup with Cheatham and Humphries, and we saw Humphries get that block shot there. You know, Duke Jr. tries to get to the basket, and then, of course, Flynn Cameron on the final possession for Adelaide, he gets it and makes a great move and splits some defenders and gets on the rim. But look at that block shot there by Humphries. He elevates up and gets it before it gets off the backboard. And look at the skill here from Cameron. He keeps it, pushes the dribble through, and just a fantastic finish, Joel.
So this score with about 14 seconds left. And then, of course, we see the Christian Doolittle game winner, potential game winner that misses. And, of course, Adelaide go on to enjoy the celebrations of a thrilling 1-point win. Was there an opportunity there, and we've just discussed this, and we had an interesting little conversation, because when you see that replay of Perth coming up the floor after the Flynn Cameron bucket, there's a very big player in Wildcats colours named Joe Luala-Chul Jr. who is standing at the scorer's table. If you were John Rillie in that moment, are you calling timeout?
Let's break it down. Okay, so in this case where Perth were struggling to get points on the board, as I mentioned before, they only scored 4 points in the final 5 minutes. If it was a situation where teams were going back and forth scoring the basketball, then I certainly would have been okay with pushing the ball and trying to get an ad hoc bucket in the final 14 seconds. But because Perth were struggling and very, very disjointed on the offensive end, and JLA is standing there at the scorer's bench waiting to get back into the game, I think I would have blown a timeout there, used my final one, and set up an offensive set, some type of scheme to be able to get a quality look. I didn't love the look that Doolittle got, but again, John really knows his team better than I do, but kind of conventional basketball thinking would have been to go for a timeout there, and that's how I would have played it. I would have felt sick just looking up at the end of the game and having a timeout remaining on the scoreboard.
Yeah, we're all 2020 in hindsight, right? But yeah, watching JLA stand on the sidelines when he's one of those key offensive players for Perth, that was a fascinating little wrinkle down the stretch there. And a big credit to Isaac Humphries as well, because he really paced Adelaide when they were struggling to tick the scoreboard over early. He was efficient. He makes the big defensive play. He's having a magnificent season.
Well, he's one of the guys who I took a lot of heat for having him at number 10 in my top 15, Joel. And I just say, if you look at the numbers, you look at the advanced metrics and the impact he has on the Adelaide 36ers, it's significant, and there's no way he is not a top 10 player. Yesterday, he goes 13 of 15 from the field. Look, this is a guy who's an NBA player. You know, he had a stint, and realistically, if he's playing like this, don't be surprised if there's a knock on his door at the end of this NBL season because of the way he's playing the game, and he's playing winning basketball on both ends of the court.
Yeah, he's doing some great things at the moment for the Adelaide 36ers, who, of course, are now on top of the table. Melbourne lost yesterday, Adelaide win.
Incredible.
Yeah, what a season they are putting together. They were always going to be so much fun to watch, and they are proving it at the moment. The other game yesterday, the early game, was Throwdown 31, and that was the other really conclusive result from yesterday's action, because it means that Melbourne slipped down to second by virtue of South East Melbourne's biggest Throwdown win at 25 points, their biggest Throwdown score at 111. They get it done 111 to 86. And it was comprehensive from the South East Melbourne Phoenix.
It was, and you know, about 2/3 of the way through that first quarter, South East Melbourne took over, and they never gave the lead up after that. I thought the energy that they played with on the defensive end that had been successful against lesser teams finally came to effect against one of the best teams in the competition. And Melbourne United, Dean Vickerman rolls the dice and tries to go with a different starting lineup, removes Jesse Edwards, removes Chris Golding, removes Milton Doyle, and it didn't work. Melbourne United only put up 86 points. They were really bad on the defensive end, giving up 111. And finally, Southeast Melbourne get a big scalp. I think this will do tremendous things for their confidence. But Joel, when I look at what happened yesterday, I think Southeast Melbourne can take a deep breath now and just reset themselves and try and push on from here.
Interesting little time for them to go down to Traralgon this week for a couple of games. They're in an Ignite Cup action against Tassie on Wednesday. They play New Zealand then on Saturday night down in Gippsland in their 2 games there. Nathan Sobey was part of your top 15. He is in the MVP conversation, and he deserves to stay there. His performance yesterday was terrific. He carried them in the third quarter when things started to just tighten up a little bit and then really help them stretch their legs.
You know what I loved from a non-playing aspect was that he went after Tyson Walker early. And he was a bit of an instigator, and he's one of the few guys in the league who is an elite performer, an MVP candidate, but he also has that bit of fire in him where he tries to change the dynamic of the game just through personality, just through conduct. Now, it always doesn't work, but I thought yesterday it was very effective. And when he's playing in that manner, Southeast Melbourne are able to beat everyone. Keep in mind also, Joel, they were undermanned. No Malik Lewis, no Owen Foxwell, and these are 2 key guys. These are 2 starters for Southeast Melbourne, and I just thought that was a watershed moment, not only for them as a team, but for Southeast Melbourne Phoenix as a program.
Yeah, that is a real win of substance yesterday for the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix and keeps them in that top 2 conversation. That is for sure. So the Melbourne side of things is fascinating. There was a few little rumblings around before the game that Dean Vickerman was looking at a change, and then of course he said after the Thursday game against Perth that the first 5 minutes of the game was among the worst that he's seen in the NBL. We thought he might make 1 change to the starting lineup. We did not expect that he would make 3 changes to the starting lineup. And I come back to your top 15, the number 4 player, Jesse Edwards. See you later. We don't need you in this starting group. Thank you very much, Jesse. He does not impact the game in any way. Milton Doyle comes out and played pretty well, to be fair. And Chris Golding, who was, of course, unwell on Thursday, doesn't make that starting group. What did you make all of that, and psychologically the impact that this could have on this Melbourne team, maybe even going forward?
Well, you never know, and that's the problem. You take this type of risk and you hope it works out for you, and it goes totally the other way and results in a 25-point disastrous loss on a prime TV spot. How does it affect Jesse Edwards going forward? I don't know Jesse Edwards. I don't know what type of resilience he is equipped with. Is this a blow to his ego? Does he take this as a burden and take it the wrong way? He wasn't good in yesterday's game. Doyle, on the other hand, a more seasoned professional. He's been around the league. He comes out and responds in the manner, I'm assuming, head coach Dean Vickerman wanted him to. And then the third one, Chris Goulding, he's been in this situation. He knows what it's about. He's a true professional. But the one I'm worried about is Jesse Edwards, because he is the guy. He was number 4 in the top 15, but he is the guy that is the differential point with the rest of the league. You need him to be really good. You need him to be able to check the other bigs in the competition, including someone who they faced this Friday night, Isaac Humphries.
Yeah, and if he didn't play yesterday, you wouldn't have noticed much difference. To be brutally honest, with Jesse Edwards, he did not impact the game in any meaningful way throughout the course of that contest. Now, whether that's related to the way that he played or not, he has not played well against South East Melbourne in their 3 games this year.
And that's true, but we don't know. Perhaps there was a sickness that's gone through the Melbourne United camp. We don't really know the inner workings. We try and get in there and figure out what's going on. But I would assume now that Dean Vickerman will reset. He tried to send his message. He'll come back with his full lineup in the starting lineup for this game Friday night, because let me tell you, Adelaide stole one in Perth. Their confidence is going to be sky high heading back to the Adelaide Entertainment Center, knowing they've got Melbourne United, a team that they felt that they outplayed a few weeks ago here at John Cain Arena. It's going to be another blockbuster game, and we're at that time of the season where they just keep rolling through.
Well, it's a Friday night double, because Perth and Sydney on Friday is going to be all kinds of fun as well. That is going to be a special Friday night of hoops.
I'm getting goosebumps again. I haven't had so many goosebumps in a round. I mean, we're going to touch it. Like the Bryce Cotton moment yesterday had me and Damon Martin just like ready to play. We were so touched by that whole moment. Sorry to jump off.
That's right. I didn't know you had enough body hair to have goosebumps, but that's another story entirely. So Melbourne last year, they just after the fever break, they're 12-4. They lost 4 games in a row. Then they go 7-2 down the stretch. I mean, this is a seasoned veteran team. They know how to weather the storm. Is there any element of concern with what you've seen from them in the last little while?
Internally, not necessarily, but the only thing is the variables around you. Other teams change. Other teams figure things out. Other teams can make personnel changes. So if you look at the team that's on top of the ladder right now, the Adelaide 36ers, I don't think they're really functioning at 9 out of 10. I still think they're 7 out of 10 with a lot of room to grow. And that affects Melbourne United, because you're going to have to beat a couple of these really good teams in your run to the championship. You know, they're steady, they're infrastructurally super sound, they know how to win basketball games, but they're going through something right now. In their last 8 games, Joel, they're only 4-4.
And they've got 2 tough tests to come as well. So it's going to be a testing weekend against Adelaide and Sydney for Melbourne United coming up, no doubt about that. The big surprise result out of the weekend was the Cairns Taipans. No Jack McVeigh, no Rain Smith, no Sam Wardenberg.
Wow.
No problems for the Cairns Taipans against the reigning champions, no less, on Saturday night. I think there would have been a lot of NBL fans who would have dismissed this outcome as a lay-down misère and nothing less than that. And the Taipans, again, went into Illawarra and made a statement.
Illawarra just can't handle their business against teams that they should beat. They have a really good victory against Southeast Melbourne that they almost squandered, by the way. A massive lead. They look really good. QJ Peterson's going nuts. Got 42. They get a wounded Snakes team coming in there. They were supposed to destroy these guys at home. Without Jack McVeigh, they just did not capitalize, and they let that man, Andrew Andrews, do whatever he wanted out there on the floor. They never got themselves going in any type of systematic offensive function. They look flat, Joel, and it's really inexcusable, especially for a Justin Tatum team that plays and thrives on emotion. He is a guy that coaches you up and gets you ready. They just look like they are suffering the proverbial hangover from a championship season, even though there's been a lot of shift in player personnel. As a whole, it just doesn't look invigorated. It doesn't look like they know how to win. And on defense, they are really, really struggling.
Really great performance from Andrew Andrews for the Cairns Taipans. He led the line for them. I mean, the big story out of this game is Illawarra, and the fact that, I mean, it doesn't feel like you can trust them at the moment. They are a highly, as you said, a highly emotional team, a highly volatile team. They play brilliantly against South East Melbourne for a certain portion of that game and then completely drop their bundle, which we've seen them do so far this year. Are they done as a potential contender this season?
Well, I wouldn't go that far because that middle class on the NBL ladder is so tight. And if you go on a 2-game winning streak, that can totally change your positioning in just a matter of 7 to 10 days. So they have the talent there. Obviously, they have JaVale McGee, and he is a high-impact player. But I just think they still haven't figured out how to use him on a consistent basis. They show signs of knowing how to utilize him on the offensive end, and they function quite well. But defensively, Joel, opponents are getting any quality look they want from the three-point line. And you see teams, if they are effective from out there, and I think Cam shot at 42% the other day from the three. If you are effective from the three-point line against Illawarra, you have a very good chance of knocking them off because of the way their defensive shape is.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a conundrum wrapped in the riddle at the moment, the Illawarra Hawks. They are the NBL's yo-yo team. Their best is absolutely outstanding, and it's enthralling to watch. And their worst is enthralling to watch in the exact opposite way. You never quite know what you'll get when you tune in, but they're certainly worth tuning in to see, the Illawarra Hawks. Speaking of which, another team that is tuning in to see. Last time we did this, we spoke about the New Zealand Breakers, and that they just there was a sense that they were building towards something in this season. Well, now they are well and truly in the mix with a number of good wins in a row.
Well, I think back then I described them as pesky. I described them as feisty. They're legitimately good now, and I think Coach Petri Kapanen has worked out the formula. He's worked out the equation for this team. They have a solid identity, and it revolves around Parker Jackson Cartwright. He is sublime at the moment. He may be going through one of his best patches in his tenure in the NBL. He sets the mood for games better than any other point guard in the competition, and then he has the ability to bust out at key moments. We saw him hit the dagger 3 against the Kings to bury them in that Ignite Cup game, and now Brockington has found his role. Salmon Nenga is going for an all-NBL season, and the dunk on Magne was something incredible the other day. But when you look at the way this team plays basketball, they're a top 4 defensive team, and offensively, I think they have enough structure in place in close games they can get you.
Just quietly, Sam Menenga's highlight reel is as good as anyone in the competition this year.
Well, just alone over the past 10 days.
Yeah, the CV of highlights that the big man is putting together is quite something, and he is having an awesome campaign for the New Zealand Breakers. Are they now the favourite for that 6th spot in your mind?
Well, they sit now at 7-10, Joel, and I know we've talked about it often that they squandered games early as they were trying to figure it out. But what if they go through a similar chain of events where they have a lot of close games? I think now they know what's required to win those games, and I think Parker Jackson Cartwright understands, hey, when these games get tight, it's basically got to be up to me to get us through, and that's what he's been doing. They're on a nice little run, 7-10 in 6th place. 5th place is the Sydney Kings at 7-7. So getting up into the 5th spot even becomes a realistic possibility for the Breakers. Even
in some of those more close or recent close games that they've lost, Parker Jackson Cartwright has shown a real command of things, and that's hugely encouraging for them over the back end of this season. The vanquished was Tassie on Saturday night, so 6-10 now, the Jack Jumpers. They kind of lose the catbird seat for that 6th spot, and they fall back into the mess of those teams that are on the outside and looking in. What's going on with the team from the Apple Isle?
I think just all the injuries that they had obviously disrupted their rhythm, especially on the offensive end, but I'm sure Scott Roth will be preaching defense, 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 because rarely does a Scott Roth team not be in the top 2 or 3 in that category. And right now, they're nowhere close to being in the top half of the league in terms of team defense. Offensively, they still don't look like they're really working in the right flow, but that can be mitigated if they get stops, if they get out on the break and play a bit more quicker. And I think I wouldn't be surprised to see some offensive tweaks. But foundationally, it comes back to their defense, rebounding the basketball, and getting out and going.
Relatively anonymous weekends for both the Brisbane Bullets and the Sydney Kings, so they both have losses from only their one game. They've both got big weekends coming up across the next round in NBL hoops, particularly Sydney, who have got Perth and then Melbourne. That's going to be a huge test for a Kings team coming off losses either side of the break.
Well, they had a nice lead against the Breakers in the third quarter, and they just weren't able to build upon it. I think they really need Dellavedova back as quickly as possible just to give them some sensibility, maybe some defensive grunt. Look, they're playing fine. They're playing well enough to finish in the top 6, but they're not about the top 6. That's not where they come into this season. They're chasing championships. They're looking for top 2, top 3 finishes to ensure, you get home court games in the postseason. They don't want to be in a situation where they're playing an eliminator at home, because we know how that's worked out the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I got a feeling Brian Gordon didn't come back to Sydney to finish in the top half of the competition. That is for sure. So they need to get their skates on and do that in a reasonable hurry. We finish the show every week with thumbs up and thumbs down. I'm going to kick this off this week. I deferred to you last time.
Yep.
I'm just going to hold the ball here for one of the final possessions in the game before I give it to you as the closer of things. My thumbs up is the Adelaide 36ers. I mean, you sit on top of the table for a reason. You go into a charged environment yesterday. And I think there's no doubt that the Sixers teams of years past would have completely dropped their bundle. They could have been overawed by the emotion in the building yesterday. And to do what they did, to find the steal within themselves, to come back from that deficit, to do it in a really complete way, both at the defensive end and the offensive end as well, and to connect everyone. They didn't need the big Bryce Cotton performance necessarily, although he was obviously very important down the stretch. It wasn't just a one-person show for the 36ers. It was a team effort. It was a complete performance. Now, not for the whole game necessarily, but they are shaping as clearly the form team in the competition with where they sit on the ladder at the moment. And they occupy top spot, and they look a good bet that, they're every chance to keep this as we go down the end of the season.
They're tough, and the fact that they have Bryce Cotton as their guy makes them a possibility of winning the championship. And I think Mike Wells has done a terrific job in implementing a system on both ends of the floor that works well and utilizes Bryce Cotton's superstardom to benefit others around him. Now, on the defensive side, they are improved. But in speaking with Mike Wells Friday night in Adelaide before that Brisbane Bullets game, he is very aware that that team needs to be in the top 4 defensively. Now, right now, as we speak this morning, they are sitting 5th, just out that 4th spot. So I think there will be a significant emphasis over the next couple of weeks from Mike Wells to his team to improve on the defensive end, to see if we can statistically put ourselves in that historical position to win a championship by being in the top 4 with respect to their defensive rating.
Yeah, they're not far away at the moment, the Adelaide 36ers, no doubt about that. I'm going to just run a little dribble handoff here to Rucker at the top of the key. You're up.
Oh, my turn? Okay, let's go. My thumbs up is the whole Perth experience yesterday against the Adelaide 36ers and Bryce Cotton's return. I cannot even describe how emotional it was in the building, and I thought the Wildcats organization, with all the hype that went on in the offseason, all of the bitter tweets, all of the pettiness, I thought the Wildcats showed up in a true, classy, and professional manner, paying tribute to Bryce Cotton in a way that reduced the man to tears pre-game, and I thought it was a great ploy to soften him up. I thought it was honorable. It was just tremendous, and I give the Wildcats organization, led by their owner, Mark Arena, as many thumbs up that is possible. I thought the game itself, the Wildcats came out and performed well off the back of the Melbourne United victory, and Perth know how to do events. That's why we're going there for Hoops Fest, Joel, for a little plug. But they did this spectacularly. They had the largest crowd in RAC Arena history, and they saw one of the great games from the opening ceremony until the final tip, in which unfortunately they dropped that one. It was a true wonder and an honor to be able to be out there and document that game with Lockie Reed, Damian Martin, and Annalie Maley. It was something special and something I'll never forget.
Yeah, the spectacle was absolutely sick. 13,600 odd people, about 12,800 of them there to discuss the top 15 with you. So it was a big crowd for various reasons, I would say, on a Sunday. But it was something really magic, and fair play to the Wildcats for handling it the way that they did. And I think prudent not to poke the bear and make Bryce Cotton angry before the start of that game. I'm just going to take absolute chalk here with the thumbs down. It's the Illawarra Hawks. Can't trust them. Just flat out can't trust them at the moment. They are, as we said, emotional. They are volatile. They're the NBL's yo-yo team. They play to the level of their opponents. Now, whether that be good or bad, it's the classic archetype of a team that they fall into at the moment, is that against a good team, they'll get up for that challenge. They've beaten Melbourne this year. They beat South East Melbourne earlier in the round. And then against the lower teams in the competition, they just fall into that trap. You can get them with the trap game and you can lure them into something, and they will not be able to fight their way out of it. They need to find some resolve. They need to find some grit. They need to find some answers at the moment. And Justin Tatum's got a big task on his hands.
He certainly does. And I think, they get the Brisbane Bullets this week down in Illawarra, so it's a chance to try and capitalize on a team that's struggling right now in Brisbane, but they need to. I think this is kind of do or die for them in this game against Brisbane. And is Justin Tatum and his coaching staff able to find some style of play that works for them? And they've been poor at home, which is surprising also. I think that's 3 or 4 really poor losses where they've had their doors blown off down at the Wynn Entertainment Center, a place that was basically a fortress last season and a place that was built upon their ability to defend other teams.
Yeah, and it's very easy to look at the coaching staff in these situations and say they need to find the answers. At some point, the players need to take responsibility.
Now, Joel, it comes down to the players, and they shouldn't be pointing any fingers because, hey, that coaching staff, you know what they've all got? They've got championship rings.
Yep, they've got the equity in the building. Sort your issues out, and let's get on with the business of trying to make a run at this thing. What about your thumbs down?
My thumbs down goes to Mitch Norton, and this is a compassionate one. I feel bad that they finally get Nordo back, and he's so important, and he's been such a great servant of the National Basketball League. But now he's starting to go through an injury run, and we saw him, again, hurt his foot against the Adelaide 36ers Friday night down at the Adelaide Entertainment Center. But it's spread out more on a macro basis to this Bullets franchise that continues to be plagued by injuries. I said a few weeks ago, it's as if they are serving some type of karmic debt. My plea to the basketball gods, leave the Bullets alone now. Can we just let them be? Universe, send some good mojo down to the Brisbane Bullets and let them play some healthy basketball. Rant over, Joel.
Yeah, they've endured enough. Make the torment stop. I think that's a worthy plea to those upstairs to try and sort this out. Of course, Ignite Cup action is back on Wednesday. We'll be in Traralgon for New Zealand for South East Melbourne taking on Tassie down in Gippsland in regional Victoria, so that is going to be all types of fun. Ruck, you need to go and get some sleep. You're on the late flight back from Perth. You've done a great job to come in here this morning, and very much appreciate you guiding me through it all.
Thanks for filling in, Joel. You've done a terrific job.
It's always good fun here on Moments That Matters, of course, presented by our friends at Mitsubishi Motors, who have been doing it for 45 years, and we greatly appreciate their support. Thanks for your company. What a weekend of NBL basketball it was. The storylines keep delivering, and great to have you with us here on Moments That Mattered.
It's the moments when stars come to play.